David Grush coming out is actually to hide some of this stuff that's coming out with Antarctica, or it's happening at the same time to have more of a disclosure, depending on which camp you're in.
What we found was that this craft was human operated, but in conjunction with other beings.
What is this base, and what is it really trying to do, right? So he said that this ice cube base is the world's largest neutrino detector, which seems random and bizarre if you're just hearing that outside of his description, you know?
This thing, it literally expands energy so fast and creates resonant energy and a scalar type energy that they didn't really understand.
So I'm listening to you talk, and you're talking about things melding together, and I'm thinking about the Philadelphia experiment. I'm just like, this is
Right.
taking it to the next level, you know? Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Metaphysical podcast for another episode in this marathon of a deep dive into the secrets of Antarctica. From Atlantis and Ark of Gabriel rumors to UFO secret military operations and Nazis, we've covered a lot so far. But today, we're going to get into some of the claims made by whistleblowers like Eric Hecker, who worked at an Antarctic base and later came forward with testimony about the surprising hazards, covered up truths, and technology most people wouldn't believe are really located there or believe actually existed. What happens when your superiors or the world's government tell you one thing about peace and scientific collaboration, but your eyes show you a world of suppressed danger, otherworldly weapons, and shady experiments? Well, we're about to talk about all of it. So join remote viewer John Vivanco and me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, for a show that's going to be out of this world.
If you're listening or you're watching us on a video platform, the Metaphysical Show, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. It really helps us when you do that. And make sure you hit that bell for future episodes because we will be here.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot to talk about. We're not even sure how long this episode's going to be, or if we're going to have to split it up into two, because the whistleblower Eric Hecker is such rich content in and of itself.
I know, it's like some of these episodes are like infinite, like 8-hour, 10-hour episodes, really.
Yeah. I think we were kind of thinking the Mount Shasta series that we did was going to be like 5 episodes or something. It ended up turning into like 10 because it's just so much to cover.
Right.
And Antarctica is not quite as rich, but it's there. I mean, there's a lot going on. No Lemurians, unfortunately. Although, if there are, we're just unaware. So we'll leave that one open. We did find some really interesting stuff though in the last episode, where we covered this strange octagonal, I don't know, hidden base or ship or craft.
That was weird, man.
I'm still blown away by that. Like, I'm thinking about it all the time. Like, man, what the heck? And like, you know, the data that your remote viewers got about, you know, the reasoning behind this and how it looks at genetic material and stuff was fascinating.
I know, but you know, I mean, that's like the thing that we always see though, is that's aside from mining and getting materials for themselves, earth stuff, the other side is genetic. Like it's just, that's what we see all the time, especially when you get to those renditions of beings that were involved with this cube there in Antarctica. Those types of beings always seem to be really, really interested in the genetics of whatever.
Yeah, and it actually, like, it makes you wonder whether or not humans have it wrong, right? Because here we are trying to create the next best computing like technology, some type of computing technology, where these aliens are coming in that already have it, and they're looking for genetic biomaterial, which is like, well, that just, like, think about that for a minute. Like, I think we've been told for a really long time that, oh, bioorganisms are so slow, they're kind of pathetic and all of this stuff, when in reality, it's like the most advanced technology potentially, right?
Right.
I mean, like, when you take a step back and think about how advanced the human body is and what it can do and what we're not even aware that it can do, and how it heals itself and how it grows and how humans can create more humans and all of this stuff. Like, it's so amazing, but we just kind of take it for granted. And here we are trying to create transhumanism future, and we don't even understand our own body.
Yeah, a good point. Really good point. Yeah, and
Weird.
that's what we see. I mean, yeah, we do have this AI construct. It's like that's already solved for a lot of these beings. Incredible technology, incredible AI, but at a certain point, there's this biological interface into it, which is the main factor when you get right down to it.
You know, speaking of, I think just really interesting technology, we've got this whistleblower, Eric Hecker, who appeared recently at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., in a conference that Dr. Stephen Greer set up.
Right,
And
Greer.
John, you know a little bit about
Yeah,
Dr. Greer,
Greer's
right?
he's been in the game for a while. A long, yeah, this is like probably the 1990s ish, maybe even in the 80s. I'm not sure. So he created, first off, was CSETI, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, where
Really?
they would do what he called CE5
Mm,
protocol, where
yes.
they would call in craft. So they would have a close encounter of the fifth kind. And the fifth kind is human contact, human interaction. And so he created that. And, people would go out with these sort of meditative processes to call in alien ships. And then they would have experiences. They would see things, he's got many years of documenting that stuff. And then he formed the Disclosure Project later on, which was to gather those people that want to be whistleblowers and try to institute some form of protection through government means. So he's been working with the government in order to do that. And so his Disclosure Project and the conferences that he as well as the documentaries, has been a huge thrust, a huge boon for the UFO disclosure area in general, because he's really one of the big ones that's pushing it and getting protection for some of these people and then presenting the information.
Yeah, and they know, like, there's only a certain amount of people that you can go to if you want to come out as a whistleblower, right? I mean, there's not. Dr. Greer is probably one of the more credible, I guess, like, folks that
Right.
organize these things.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is. So, I mean, see the thing, he's got a DR appended to his name there. So
Right.
people look at that as being an authority in and of itself. If he was just Stephen Greer, no, not nearly as much. I guarantee it. People look to
So
these authority figures as being something important.
maybe we should just put doctor in front of our name and fake it until we make it. Then people will listen to us more.
Yeah.
No, it's a good point though. Like, that is really valued above other things in society, and in a kind of a weird way, because I've met some really shady doctors
Yeah.
who, like, they're shysters more than they are like actual doctors, but they have the doctorate, so they can call
Right.
themselves a doctor, right? So you do have to kind of be discerning when it comes to that stuff. But Eric Hecker released some bombshells in this press conference that we're going to go over in this or these episodes. And I kind of wanted to show a short clip from Eric just to kind of set the stage for the discussion we're about to have. And so you all at home can see him if you're watching, and you can hear him if you're listening. Lindsay's about to pull that up. We've got a short video from Twitter that we can watch here about the base that he was referring to in his accounts.
The Ice Cube neutrino detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science as presented. But I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform that I will list rapidly a few things that it can do. Vehicle detection. We're learning that these off-world craft, on-world craft, ours or other nations, are also emitting neutrinos. So this makes the South Pole Station effectively an air traffic control station for this new level of equipment that nobody's discussing. In addition to the ability to detect neutrinos and the exotic vehicles, I provided documentation that shows that this is also a system for faster than light communications. In the past, Gary McKinnon has hacked NASA, found the off-world fleet, the list of captains, and it's apparent that if we have faster than light vehicles moving throughout the system, we're going to need faster than light communications. This is that facility. Unfortunately, I have other bad news. The season that I was there, 2010 to 2011, we converted from construction to operations and maintenance in both the elevated station and the detector array. Unfortunately, when they first fired it up, that was when we had the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. There was 2 incidental shots before they were able to target it correctly. This is an earthquake generating device as well. This is the weapons of war that we have to deal with now and what Raytheon's hiding. There's an ELF system at the South Pole Station that when I arrived, I was told it was off, dismantled, and completely defunct. In my work, I will rapidly just tell you, I had to figure out the circuitry for certain other repairs, and I found that this system is in fact completely energized, up and running, and being utilized with the other systems for nefarious purposes as well. The Atmospheric Research Observatory is in what we call the clean air sector. I witnessed myself a very powerful green laser shooting out of the top of this facility into the cosmos. This, I believe, is a secondary form of long-range communications and or a defense system. I am not saying that we need to be scared of anything that's out there, but please understand the military-industrial complex is happy to invest all of your money in alleviating their fears.
Okay. Man, even that was like a minute clip. And there's so much in that, just alone that minute clip. I mean, we've got green laser beams shooting into the cosmos. We have earthquake machines, direct energy weapons. These are big claims, and some big businesses or corporations were brought up in there. Who he's accusing of basically having this knowledge and keeping it from the public.
Yep. And I've always felt, not that we've looked into any of this stuff, that whole military industrial complex, in other words, the companies that create the stuff that are so compartmentalized that nobody really focuses on, are the ones that have a ton of control and a ton of capabilities beyond our own military. I mean, the military is probably nothing when it comes to these companies. I mean, they have the technology. They're the ones developing it.
That's true. And also, we're not talking about stupid people that work at these corporations. They can get a compartmentalized task and look at that and then say, well, hey, what do you think it is that these guys are trying to make with this one little piece that they asked us to develop? And they're going to come up with theories on what those are and figure out how to utilize them in a bigger organism or, technology.
Yeah, exactly. And the ones that are, in a sense, they are creating the idea, at least in the counter conspiracy culture of the breakaway civilizations, hey, we got all this technology. We know how to do things. We have like connections with other beings in the universe. Let's go make another society.
A colony somewhere.
Right.
Which is like probably much more probable than I think the average person, allows themselves to believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely is. I mean, geez, it's like, right now we have disclosures slowly leaking out, coming out about the Tic Tac. Man, that isn't even the tiniest tip of the iceberg of this
It's
stuff.
laughable.
Because when you get into UFO researchers that have been doing this since, 50s, 60s, 70s, man, all that stuff's out there. It's been out there for a long time. It's easily correlated information between people all across the world on what is going on, who's been involved. And if you don't actually look into it and take the time to research this stuff on a deep, deep level, you're just going to follow what the government, what the media tells you about it. But I'm telling you, it's like way, 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 way beyond what most people know in their daily lives.
Well, and you guys, if you're wondering if we're aware of the recent whistleblower David Grush, we are. And in our next episode, we're probably, or in an episode really soon, we're going to detail some of that stuff. So we may even publish that before this episode airs. So just if you haven't seen that, definitely go back and see that, or get ready for it, because we're going to be coming out with it pretty soon.
What's really interesting to me is that the news programs that are picking this stuff up are very serious about it now because
Yeah.
well,
because of his background, really.
Right, his background, right? And I'd say like 5 years ago, any news story, if this guy came out 5 years ago, he would be laughed at in the news. But now they're taking this stuff seriously because of the Pentagon releases.
Which is a can of worms we're going to open up in that episode, because talking through the psyops, or the clustered psyops that actually are here, it's worth kind of discussing, because like, why now? And you know, it is also very interesting, I might add, that David Grush came out at a time very close to when Eric Hecker came out to talk about what was going on down in Antarctica at the National Press Club. So, you know, there are some people theorizing out there that David Grush coming out is actually to hide some of this stuff that's coming out with Antarctica, or it's happening at the same time to have more of a disclosure, depending on which camp you're in. I do think it's good that some information comes out. I do think it's a limited hangout, though. Eric Hecker, though, I will say some of this stuff that he's come out with is, in terms of disclosure, some of the most exciting stuff that we've seen in many years of disclosure, because it's clear that he's not happy with how he and his teammates were treated. And it seems like he's really trying to expose this stuff, because corporations shouldn't be putting people in positions that they were in, because some of it was highly dangerous.
Yeah, incredibly. And this is like, where do you ever hear about whistleblowers out of Antarctica? Right. I mean, you know, he's not a high level scientist. He probably could be, but his position wasn't necessarily that. He had access to everything. And so where do you hear? Like, you don't hear this stuff. You hear it, you know, in the UAP field, but not here. So this is why it's so fascinating. Whether he was a high level scientist or not makes no difference, because this is really one of the first big level people coming out to talk about it.
Well, and it's bringing together disclosure in many different areas of disclosure. Like, we're talking about physics and science, otherworldly craft and craft detection, faster than light communication, green lasers that seems like an exotic technology. And then you've got this technology that everybody has been made fun of over the last 20 plus years for trying to expose what HARP is doing, which is very similar to what this ice cube detector thing is, according to Eric Hecker. You know, and we're going to be getting into some more of this as we go through, but to kind of give you guys an overview of Eric Hecker, he claimed to spend 366 days at the South Pole Station in 2011, and he had a key to every compartment, which is something nobody else had. And he talked to each department to find out what made each of the departments tick, according to him. And all of those people were experts in their field. Now, this was a job that was under Raytheon Polar Services. You know, he went through and explained a lot about himself, where he was I don't know what you'd want, like a fire expert. Yeah.
So, he was a firefighter, basically. Yeah.
And plumbing and heating expert.
And plumbing and heating.
Yeah. So, and you can imagine, I think, like, why he spent a lot of time trying to explain why this type of a profession would have more access to everything in a place like Antarctica. And John, what do you think that reason would be?
Well, I mean, since he's involved with the security safety of people there, that was his job, or part of his job, to be able to, I mean, look, if you get a breach or a fire or any type of problem in the structure, everybody's dead. That's all there is to it. And so you need to have people that are trained to take care of these structures in various ways.
Well, and I would add to that it's even more important to have a professional like Eric there than in a normal place, because we're talking about sub-zero temperatures. It's not like you can just pull out some water and put a fire out on Antarctica. You can't. Like,
Right.
what's going to happen if you do? It's actually, that's even more catastrophic than the fire probably. And it's going to freeze right away. There's no availability for the water. So you have to use fire extinguishers. And that style of putting a fire out is completely different than just normal fire from, what I'm hearing from Eric here.
Right. Basically, you're smothering it with chemicals.
Right. There were a bunch of fire emergencies and other emergencies often, according to him. They would have the cryogenic facility. The alarm would go off. And what he said was, if helium is at 1/4 of a degree above Kelvin in the facility, there's like, I guess, 500,000 gallons of helium being stored at 4 degrees Kelvin. Stored helium at an uncontrolled release would expand at a rate of 450 to 1, like basically like a hydrogen bomb going off, and it would take off a large portion of the South Pole Station if that was to happen. This is how sensitive this stuff is.
That's like the public surface layer of things that are down there too.
Right.
It's like, what about the stuff that is hidden? I mean, there's stuff down there that is incredibly dangerous beyond that.
Right. And this is kind of where it gets into exactly like what you were saying. Like, why is this, what is this base, and what is it really trying to do? Right. So he said that this ice cube base is the world's largest neutrino detector, which seems random and bizarre if you're just hearing that outside of his description, 275 physicists in 12 countries and 48 institutions collaborating on this science.
Yeah, this is some crazy science. Like, this is pretty new stuff, super cutting edge as far as the public realm of humans go.
Right. And it's more than one thing, right? Like he says that it's a neutrino detector. But at the same time, it's the world's largest telescope, John.
Right, exactly.
What the hell? Like, that's like, so this base is definitely accomplishing more than one objective for sure.
Well, the thing is with these types of technologies is that, and we've seen this with remote viewing, other things like this. So some scientists have an understanding of capturing information in a certain way. They set up a system, and they find that when they implement the system, there are other variabilities that come in that they didn't know about, that it produces this, or it can also do that. And it can go down these different pathways, right? And so that is kind of like what this is about, this neutrino detector. There are other things. Like, I don't think that at least people on the surface level really understood truly the whole ramification of what this thing can do. I mean, they're just, I think a lot of these guys were just like, we just want to see what neutrinos do and how we can get information from them on where they came from, how they what direction they came from, where their source point is, so we can investigate that in other ways, right? So, I mean, beyond that, like, the system they set up does way more than just that.
Exactly.
That's what he's saying.
And the telescope part of this makes sense because, as we pointed out in previous episodes, we're talking about this area sitting on about 9,300 feet of elevation, right? It's on top of ice, 9,300 feet of elevation in the South Pole, closer. It's easier to get through a lot of the atmosphere from there and see things clearer with a telescope, like of that magnitude, So for those of you wondering, this ice cube is about 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. That's the dimensions of the array, which means that the array itself, these DOMs that he's calling it, they go down. No, DOMs are digital optical modules, and he keeps calling them DOMs, and they go down 1 kilometer into the ice.
Right. And so you have a neutrino that comes from space, And neutrinos are so small that sometimes they'll hit ice, sometimes they won't. And he said it was a rare event when a neutrino hit a water molecule, and that created a blue flash. And so they would study that blue flash and get information from it. So that's the telescope aspect.
That's really, really interesting. Now that seems to be a very surface scientific reason for what they're studying and why, especially when he starts going into neutrinos a little bit later, right? And he says, neutrinos are tiny particles, almost massless, moving close to the speed of light or faster than the speed of light,
Or
according to
faster.
what he was told.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, right. That's where a lot of this starts to get like, wait, what? What did you say? So he said that the purpose of the detector was to find answers and to clarify these postulations more by utilizing the DOMs underground that were wired up to the surface, and information was processed in the ice cube lab on the surface, right? He kind of goes on to say, just trying to get to the important stuff here, that neutrinos are so small that they pass through almost everything without making contact. And just like what you said, on the rare occasion, there'll be this flash of blue light, creating what he said is a muon. All right. That's the blue light. Each of these DOMs is not just a passive receiver, but can actually transmit up to 2,047 volts per DOM, which makes the facility the world's largest phased array transmitter. So it's the world's largest multifaceted direct energy weapon system. And when the system was initially fired up, what he said in this clip is that these earthquakes in New Zealand actually occurred, and that it was an accident. He kind of goes into next, like, all of this is earthly stuff. I mean, all of this is stuff that we can imagine happening on Earth and causing, like, it's science that's understandable according to our current understanding of science. We want to study these muons. He goes on to say that Gary McKinnon was the man who hacked NASA's computer system and found an off-world fleet of spaceships being utilized for quite some time. He said that, remember? And then if you consider the possibility of faster than light travel, then there's the possibility of faster than light communications as well. That's crazy. That's like serious disclosure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, look at Gary. We have a picture of Gary up. Doesn't he look a little alien?
He does, man.
He does.
He definitely
he was
does.
a fascinating character. I mean, he literally, okay, so he was an IT guy. And what was he doing? He was upset because in the period that he decided to go on a hacking spree of military and NASA computers, he was upset that in Britain at the time, people weren't able to pay the high cost to heat their homes. So a lot of people, older folks, were dying. And so he was upset by this and wanted to expose free energy, that the military had free energy. So that was like his basic intention for doing what he did, which was incredible. So I think he accessed about 297 computers, or around 200 computers. And basically, at one point on a NASA system, he was poking around. He saw two folders on a desktop. He opened a folder up, opened a picture up, and there was a big, huge cigar-shaped craft, right, in a photograph above Earth, right? Now, in the other folder, it was the same picture, but with the ship removed. That's when he got shut down. That's when they found out about him, and they came to arrest him. So, yeah, Gary. So we looked into Gary McKinnon and his whole, claim there, which absolutely was true. He did see what he saw.
You're saying he did see what he saw?
He did
what he
see
claimed?
what he claims to have seen. Right.
Right.
Exactly. He is not telling a lie. He's truthful about that. And then, so we decided to dig into what that craft was. And what we found was that this craft was human operated, but in conjunction with other beings. And this craft was somewhat of a deep space type craft. And it was like a hand me down from another civilization, other species, to humans. And so the humans were basically, at that point, they knew how to operate it, but they were using it in conjunction with these other beings. And so it was like some older type of technology that these beings decided to hand down to the humans to use for deeper space travel, to back engineer, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I mean, hell, I'm just, telling you what the remote viewing data was on this.
You're just the messenger.
That's
Don't shoot the
that's
messenger.
exactly. I mean, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny
Yeah,
too that like it makes so much sense. Like, oh, here we have an old spacecraft, a hand-me-down spacecraft that they're like, we'll just give you a little bit of this information so you can reverse engineer it. We don't want you getting too out of control here.
well, that's the thing. It's like, okay, we're making a trip to Earth. These humans will trade their genetics for any type of junky technology we have. Just bring the stuff that we don't use anymore, and we'll trade it for like access to their race's genetics.
Yeah, we'll be able to abduct hundreds of thousands of more people this year if we give them this technology.
This is the broken refrigerator off the ship. Just give them this.
Perfect. Exactly. I think, he goes on to say, Eric, he says, if you consider the possibility of faster than light travel, then there's the possibility of faster than light communication. So he goes on to say, if a ship is out in space traveling that fast, you need some way to communicate with the crew. That's where the ice cube comes in with the neutrino detector capabilities. Dang.
Yeah, what's going on there, right? It's like begs the question, if this is truly the case, what is Antarctica for at this place? What is this all about? I mean, is this to communicate with these ships, as Hecker intimated there, or basically said? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, come on.
And for everyone at home wondering, we keep bringing up this ice cube thing. That is the name of the base where all of this stuff is going on. The ice cube detector, the ice cube base. This is the neutrino detector / largest telescope in the world / ELF area where they have the extremely low frequencies that are detecting different things. So faster than light comms are required for any spacefaring species. Hecker says the facility is in the South Pole in Antarctica, and it can provide long-range comms. Highly advanced ships with exotic propulsion systems, whether from this planet or not, can discharge neutrinos. And those are very microscopic particles, right?
I don't know. I mean, we looked at that. But whenever you want to get into it, we looked at like, what is the purpose of this facility outside of just the blanket statements?
Yeah, we will get into that shortly, I think. Yeah, that's crazy. So now he kind of goes into highly advanced ships with exotic, it calls it exotic propulsion systems, whether from this planet or not, can discharge neutrinos. Since the time of NASA, when trying to figure out how to get lunar module on the moon, he goes into this. This is really interesting. So when they were trying to get a lunar module onto the moon, he describes it as they came to find that their calculations for gravity were off. They decided to enter and exit from the South Pole because it's easier from there than any other location when going to the moon or anywhere else, gravity wise, John.
That is a weird thing. That's a curious thing. And that, I think I mentioned it last episode, or one of the episodes, where it's got to do with the rotational point. It's got to do with the rotational point of the Earth, where it's creating less gravity. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I think of, because this is actually the first time I've heard of this. Something that we have to look into if I can figure out a tasking for it.
Yeah, that's Maybe it is through the ice cube neutrino that we look into that.
But the thing is that okay? So where are the bases in Antarctica where there are these rockets? If that's what we're talking about here, right? So when we get to UFO anti-gravity type craft, that's just going to be able to. Gravity doesn't matter. But when we get to rockets, that's when gravity matters because we have to have enough fuel in order to push them through that gravity. And so how, like, where are the bases in Antarctica where they are launching rockets from?
Yes, but there's a lot of different reasons why Antarctica would be, I think, an essential place for this type of work. I mean,
Wait,
when we talk about
photographs, what are these photographs? Sorry, Lindsay and Rob. Are these like real photographs they photoshopped? Is this Antarctica?
This is the site that I found them on. It's a forum from nasaspaceflight.com where people put some of these photos.
And these are actually flights taking off from Antarctica. You can see it at the bottom there.
There's an organization in France that manages the archives of the French polar territories, according to this.
Well, looks like we have a whole new thing to look into.
Well, and I think that this is just one of the, to me, this seems like a completely surface, rockets. I mean, think about it. If they have technology that's tracking exotic propulsion, they have ships that have exotic propulsion, most likely. But we're still talking about the best place on the planet to leave from. I mean, you try doing this in America or anywhere else in the world where it's highly populated, people are going to see you. No one's allowed in Antarctica. Hardly anyone goes there. We're talking about 40,000 people a year that even pass through Antarctica. So regardless of whether they're using rockets and they're honing in on some anti-gravity stuff or not, it's still the best place in the world to be doing any of this stuff for different reasons, right? With Eric Hecker, just to kind of bring it back, I'd like to hear what it is that you saw with like the exotic propulsion stuff, and it, this whole idea that we've got exotic propulsion systems, whether from this planet or not, and they discharge neutrinos. You looked into some of this, right?
Yeah. So we were looking at specifically like what is the unstated intention of the ice cube, right? This whole facility. And we had a lot of surface level stuff. Like the thing's almost like a big, huge brain where literally the primary task of this is to receive those neutrinos and to decode them, understand where they came from, try and fit the pieces together between them. But the thing is so complicated that it like multitasks everything, where there's something going on in one sector and then there's something totally different going on in another sector. They've got all the information on it and they're analyzing it. And these things are related to stuff that is happening in space on the surface level, from outbursts of stars, from any type of natural phenomena in the universe, so they can study. So there's a very legitimate top layer of scientific study that is happening at the neutrino, right? Or at the ice cube with the neutrinos. Very, very legitimate. And ultimately was brought online, at least by the scientists that are on the surface level, to do just that. But because this technology is so broad, not everybody knew what it ultimately could do. So as Hecker said, this thing transmits. So when they fire this thing up, it can produce this scalar type of energy and a resonance type of energy. And when we were looking at like what it can do, what potentially Christchurch, the earthquakes that he stated, this thing, it literally expands energy so fast and creates resonant energy.
Yes.
Like that, and a scalar type energy that they didn't really understand. Because of that, it was like too much power or too much focus on a specific frequency. It can literally cause objects to meld together. It could absolutely cause disruptions.
I'm listening to you talk, and you're talking about things melding together, and I'm thinking about the Philadelphia experiment. I'm just like, this is taking it to the next level, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so that was like something that was not understood when they initially turned this thing on, because like that's with a lot of this stuff. It's like they ultimately don't know all these side ramifications that are going to take place that are going to be more important than just detecting and decoding neutrinos, right? So that's why he says that it is a directed energy weapon, because they can turn it on, add more power to it, or shift a resonant frequency. Maybe it's like holding some DOMs at a lower power while others are at higher power, et cetera. They can control this stuff in order to create effects elsewhere on the earth or in the air or whatever. Now, the other side of this, like, this is complicated stuff. Like the amount of things that this thing can do is complicated. The other side of this is, yes, absolutely 100% communication. In fact, a lot of what we see in that area in general is literally geared towards communication. This whole area is like a big brain for different types of communication across the board. So when he talks about Gary McKinnon, you think about Gary McKinnon, you think about that craft that he saw. This would be one of those things that they would be communicating with in deep space. Well, what else though? Okay, we've got aliens. That's all there is to it. The military-industrial complex has got aliens. They know them. They interact with them. These beings have given their hand-me-downs, like an old pair of pants with holes in it, to humans. Who do you think they're also communicating with off planet? They're communicating with these beings off planet. This is also in our data, where the ones that are in alignment with the ones that are working this, they're in communication with them. And a lot of this stuff has been directed by those beings in order to communicate. So this thing goes way beyond, way beyond that surface level explanation, but not known by most of the people involved. And Hecker is putting the pieces together in a very good and interesting way.
Wow. So why this place for communication though? Is it because of the energy? Is it because of is it the neutrinos itself? Are neutrinos special in some way that they,
The thing with the neutrinos is that they've got to impact a particle in order to be measured to create the Cherenkov radiation effect, right? So a neutrino, when it impacts something that you can watch, you watch it impact it, there's where you get your information. So you've got like, I don't know how many feet, kilometers, whatever of ice that they're measuring. Eventually the neutrino's probably going to hit somewhere, some ice particle there as it goes through, and they've got their array set up so like they can capture all of it happening. So I think that's really what it comes down to, is that ice is what's important. The massive layer of ice is what's important. So the neutrino has something to hit eventually.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Just the entire, okay. We're probably going to end this episode here, and in our next
but we
episode,
haven't gotten to the green lasers yet, or
exactly.
the old pole.
Exactly. In the next episode, we have to cover what the heck this green laser is, what energy they're using to power all of this, and exactly what is the old pole, and a little bit more into Eric Hecker's account of what's actually going on down there. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you guys like this episode, please leave a comment below. Let us know what you think, and also what you'd love to hear next. And we'll definitely get to that. And John, thanks so much for being with us. And we hope you guys thought this episode was as out of this world as we did.